You know what it is. It's another Friday for the Ball Hog Sports Talk. It's your boy, B. Brian ESQ, a.k.a. the Ball Hog, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, a.k.a. Mr. Success Celebration, a.k.a. Breezy, here with the crew. And the intro today, just wanted to at least give you a little bit of the background about our title, Know Your History. Know your history in a time where today is, the 4th of February, in a time where on the calendar in America, we celebrate Black History Month, BHM, as we refer to in the social media circles. There's a lot of other history that was unfolded this week. In the sports world, we have undergone what has been sort of a bombshell moment. Brian Flores, the former coach of the Miami Dolphins, a young Black coach from Brooklyn, of all places, but from a place of coaching experience. Bill Belichick's coaching tree was in New England. Literally dropped a bomb on the sports world this week. And so in today's episode of Know Your History, while we should be celebrating Black History Month, February 4th, still first week of Black History Month, we should be celebrating all the amazing things that Black people have done in this country to establish the country as it is, largely a lot of times without the proper acknowledgement. We should be letting our students know about these amazing feats. And this week, there's another historical revelation that we have to deal with. And so today, buckle your seatbelt. It's going to be a very interesting conversation. Obviously, I'll be joined with the crew. You see him, the Big Flow Show, and ETP Ellis, the producer. Stick with us. Fasten your seatbelt. We'll be back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go.
Wake up, wake up, wake up, and stay woke. Because this is the Ball Hog Sports Talk with your boy, B. Brown, ESQ, a.k.a. the Ball Hog, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South. This is the place where sports, business, and entertainment collide. And we're going to give it to you rough, rugged, and raw. So come get you a spoonful, like some grits with butter and salt. You know how we do it in the South, y'all. Make sure you do not get caught in your feelings. Strap on your seatbelt and enjoy the ride. Come on, let's go.
What's up? It's the Ball Hog Sports Talk with your boy, B. Brian ESQ, a.k.a. the Ball Hog, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, a.k.a. Mr. Success Celebration, a.k.a. Breezy. And I'm here with the crew. My man, what's up, the Big Flow Show?
What's good, America? What's good?
And none other than ETP Ellis, the producer.
What up?
Today's episode, man, Know Your History. We're going to hop into some things that might be a bit controversial. And this week, Brian Flores put the entire sports world, really the entire country, on notice of systemic racism that he calls blatant, that he calls out, and that he calls to attention for some of us because if you've paid attention, we've had coaches on this show. We had Coach Ray Sherman on this show who coached me as a wide receiver coach in the NFL, but more importantly, it coached I don't know how many years, so many years, dedicated his entire life. And we had him on celebrating David Culley being hired in Houston. David Culley is no longer in Houston. As it stands, with the Rooney Rule in place, there is uno, for those of us who play that game. You know, you get down to one card, we down to one Black coach.
And I
Who plays for Rooney?
Who plays for
How
the
long has he
Rooney
been
family.
there? He might have been there before the rule.
Or coaches?
No, the Rooney Rule started in 2003.
Okay.
And so he was not hired prior to the rule, but he has been in place for 15 years. And think about the standard in which he has had to adhere to. He has had a total of 0 losing seasons. In Mike Tomlin, who I'm talking about. But as it stands today, on this 4th of February, in the first week of Black History Month in the year 2022, 19 years after the Rooney Rule was established, we are sitting here with one Black head coach in the NFL. At the time, there were 3 when the Rooney Rule was established. So we're going to get to that, and that's the dark history of the NFL that this week, and we've seen it in social media, people have tried to articulate and explain it away in a different way. It ain't got nothing to do with race. It's got everything to do with fill in the blank with some excuse. So we're going to talk about that. The other side of the NFL conundrum is what has been the most exhilarating, exciting NFL playoffs maybe of all time. In the NFL divisional round, we talked about like, yo, that had to be the best divisional round ever, right? Because you had 4 games separated by a total of 15 points. And now you add this conference championship weekend, you had 2 games separated by a total of 6 points. One going into overtime. We can talk about that briefly. There's so much we got to get into with Brian Flores, but I would be remiss if I didn't at least discuss these playoffs. The viewership has been astronomical. It's been off the charts. You know, I mean, people watched in droves. At one point, there were 60 million viewers. 60 million viewers of that AFC game. At its high, 60 million TVs were tuned into that game. And they were exciting games, right? So you add those, the difference of 6 points in the last 2 weeks. In the last 2 weeks, you've had a total of 21 points margin of victory, which is crazy. So in this time where you've got the most exciting football going on, maybe the best playoffs ever, we got this bombshell drop. So let's take it in order. Let's talk about the playoffs first, because there are a lot of players that went out there and did some amazing things. Joe Burrow in the house, Joe Cool. Let's talk about the playoffs first, and then we'll get to Brian Flores. What did you guys think about this week's conference championships?
I thought they were fantastic. I mean, both games, you're going late in the game. You don't know who's going to win the game. I mean, that's what you want, right? You want to be able to watch it to the end and be excited, especially because I didn't truly care who won. I kind of had happy storylines I'd like to see on both sides, of the game. Right. But it's nice to watch a game like that and not like your team doesn't get beat. So I'm not like, oh, I can't believe we lost. But I thought it was fantastic. I can't think of a playoff ever of any sport that was better than this. If it wasn't that my team won.
ETP, what'd you think, man? I know people were glued to the television. I was at an AAU basketball tournament, and the best thing about this particular gym is they have televisions in the lobby area. And it looked as though we, as parents, we were all jostling between trying to be good parents and watch our kids, but glued to this television in the last few minutes of that Kansas City and Cincinnati game. What'd you think about it, ETP, all in all, conference championships? I mean, it seems like we can't ask for more. The NFL, the football gods have been good to the NFL. In a time where you thought that the NFL was on the ropes, they came out swinging because it's been great football. Over the last year, 75 out of the top 100 television broadcasts in the U.S., right? In just 1 year, 75 out of the top 100 have been NFL games. So we seem like we're on this path. What did you think about the conference championships before we talk about how the path might have been derailed a bit, ETP?
Yeah, it was great football again, right? I thought going into this week, we had a really great week with the divisional round. I thought this was going to be a little bit more lopsided, but I mean, they delivered. And the thing that's crazy with both of the games being great football, the storylines, there's just so many different storylines. Joe Burrow, second year in the league, coming back from 21-3 to then essentially beat, Kansas City, who's been a perennial powerhouse, throws Mahomes into question. He's being anointed, as the GOAT, the next coming of the GOAT or the GOAT in the end, and he's been falling short for the past couple seasons. And you question if the league's finally, actually has him fully figured out. You got Odell Beckham, getting his redemption, going to the Super Bowl, Matt Stafford in LA. It's just a lot of good stories, even underneath all the good football. So it's good for the NFL. It's good for their pockets. It's good for the fans. I don't know how exciting. I mean, the thing that surprised me the most was that, I mean, I think when we talked last week, we were expecting a blowout, or at least a shootout for San Francisco, LA, and I was surprised that ended up really just being a grudge match, and low scoring relatively. But all in all, it's good for the game. It's good for the fans. And then, in the contrast of everything else going on. So fortunately, they have a good product.
They have a very good product. 60.99 million viewers watched that Bengals and Chiefs where it peaked at. On average, that game averaged 47.9 million viewers. And the Los Angeles Rams and San Francisco 49ers drew, on average, 50.2 million viewers. Largest audience for an NFC game since 2014. You've got the largest ever viewership was 114 million, was that Patriots and Seattle game in 2015. It looked as though, because the football has been so good and the viewership is trending up, that we would break that potentially this year. Last year was the lowest since 2007. The Super Bowl only drew 96.4 million viewers. You had all this momentum, and then Brian Flores on Monday filed a class action lawsuit that wasn't surprising. There was nothing shocking about what came. Well, there were some shocking parts about it. I will say there were some shocking parts about it. But when it came to race, when it came to black coaches, when it came to the Rooney Rule being a sham, when it came to these interviews being just a check the box CYA exercise versus a substantive analysis of a candidate who we thought, when he was terminated by the Miami Dolphins, we were like, oh, he'll get hired by next week. We said that on this show. Like, Dolphins stupid, man. He's going to get hired by Nick. And here we are.
Well, we didn't say he would be hired. We said if he doesn't get hired, then there's racism in the league. And then ironically, where there's smoke, there's fire.
There's fire, right? And sometimes, and we've been doing this for a while, man. My sons in school are learning about spirituals, Negro spirituals, as a part of their whole mix of Black History Month education. And I was talking to my son about, well, do you know why spirituals even came about? Like, why are they saying the spirituals? And I share that here because it feels sort of similar, right? Like, we laugh to stop from crying. Like, we have to galvanize around something. We got to have an emotion to overcome the reality that this still exists. And in 2022, 19 years after the Rooney Rule was established, as of today, there is one Black NFL coach. Brian Flores talked about bridge coaching roles. And we'll get into that and other things. But what a crazy week in the NFL. This is the week that we should have been talking about the retirement of the GOAT. Tom Brady made it official. After Adam Schefter and someone else, I don't remember who other reporter was a little aggressive in getting the information to public, he finally took to Twitter and did it himself, or social media and did it himself. So the GOAT retires. How are we not talking about that this week? I know that you're a New England Patriots fan, so we give you the first stab at this. What do you think this means? I mean, he talked about it being his family being the largest factor behind him deciding to hang it up. He wanted to spend time with his family. Do you buy that, first of all? Because Giselle seems pretty busy herself. But what do we think this means in terms of, what is he going to do next? When you got that much money, what do you do next? Does this, at 7 Super Bowls, where is he in the overall Mount Rushmore? And this got to be a quick conversation because we got to get into Brian Flores. So we're going to do a lightning round conversation about the GOAT retiring. That's how crazy of a week in sports this has been. Let's get into it quickly, and then we got to move on. What do you guys? I'll let you start, ETP, since you are the lone Patriots fan amongst us. What do you think?
I think that he needs a better publicity team, because he clearly fumbled on his way out the door.
Didn't say a single word about the Patriots, as my man Cheeky Black points out. What's up, Cheeky?
Well,
Cheeky
first he wasn't able to control the message, right? They broke the story before he was ready to communicate it. Obviously, he needs to rethink what, where there's leaks in his team. But yeah, I mean, it was not lost on anybody in the Patriots fan base that he omitted. He mentioned Michigan and
forgot.
Yeah, he just randomly forgot 20 years of his professional experience.
Right.
But the question is, he went out. He's going out on one of the best seasons he's ever had, one of the best quarterbacking seasons that has, it's up there, and he's walking away. So it's a question of, does he really hang it up as competitive as he is, or does he throw on the 45 and come back like Jordan?
I don't, and I think it's a different sport, man. You ain't gonna just, Gronkowski's able to do it at tight end, but if you spend a year, every once in a while, you find you a running back who was an Amazon delivery package guy, but at quarterback, I don't think you can take any time off and come. That sounded like a Patriots fan being optimistic, man. He ain't coming back.
I'm just saying he walked. He didn't. The game didn't tell him when it was time. Is ultimately what it came down to.
Which I think makes him different than all the other greatest.
Absolutely,
the greatest of any other sport. He's the one. In boxing, they all walked out on their. They all left on their back.
Yeah.
In basketball, MJ walked out on one leg. He should have let that shot in Utah be the shot, but he couldn't resist it. He came back one too many times, and the Wizards, while it was good for his transition into the front office, it was bad for the basketball legacy on the court.
Yeah.
I don't care who it is. You think about all the greats, man. They all went out less than they were when we reflect upon their greatest moments. Brady really didn't do that.
Yeah.
He didn't play bad at any point this season, even in the game that they lost. He didn't have his best game, but you just needed the defense to defend. Yeah.
And I think that was a big factor. It's, he's the idea. I don't think he left because he didn't have it anymore left. I think he had to evaluate, what are the chances? I'm not going to do this for a divisional round loss another year going into my mid 40s. Right. So I think it had to come down to what he thought his probability was to actually see another championship. Because why else would you do it?
Right. As my frat brother, what's up, Gene, points out, not Mayweather. And I would say to y'all, just stay tuned, because Mayweather keep on playing with his fate, hopping in there, doing exhibition matches. We don't care if there's no title on the line. Somebody tap that chin and you get dropped, bro.
I believe your friend
Mayweather's an asterisk. We talk about asterisks all the time. When you choose who you fight,
don't do that.
You architect your career.
Who did he miss story. Though? We can talk about that all day. He didn't duck nobody.
He didn't duck anybody. He might have waited.
He waited till their careers were over to knock them down.
It's not his fault. He was getting older too. He was getting birthdays too.
But he got a NASCAR team.
Same difference in age. Whatever time he fought him, he was getting just as old.
Hey, I'm gonna resist the temptation to go there because we got so much to get into. Because that's tempting. That is so tempting. Mayweather, they got a point though. Mayweather is somebody who is went out on top to a certain degree. But he hasn't really gone out yet. He's still getting in the ring.
Mayweather's still fighting.
He's still getting in the ring.
You don't want to have this debate.
What's up, my man Cam Davis is in the building, and he asked a question about how much it would take for an attorney to submit a case that large, 58-page complaint. He's talking about Brian Flores. We're gonna get into that. And look, it's coming. It's coming. Brian Flores will be the center of attention in today's show. So let's get to the other little NFL news. How crazy is that? That is little NFL. That is low on the totem pole that Tom Brady, the greatest ever, retired this week.
I was surprised he retired. He had such a good year. He didn't take any crazy hits. He was a defensive stand away from.
You're a family man. What you mean you surprised? You're a family man.
He's already decided he's going to play old, right? You know what I mean? At some point, you decide you're going to be a lifer. So here he is old. The game isn't slipping away from him. He didn't take any crazy hits where he's getting, Ben Roethlisberger, who we won't even talk about much more than this, he looked like it was time to go. I mean, he's getting up slow, barely making it. And he limped in through these last 2 or 3 years. We were wondering, when is Ben going to quit?
Right.
But Brady still is super relevant. He could have easily won. He didn't do anything to lose that game. Obviously the quarterback has to win the
MVP
game.
candidate this season.
Huh?
Yeah.
MVP candidate. I think the team is strong. There's no reason why the team couldn't have won the Super Bowl this year. They just had a bad stance on that last one. But if the Rams won the Super Bowl, I mean, they gave the Rams the toughest battle that they've had in the playoffs so far. I just didn't think it was time to go. I don't know. I thought it was, he still – I was surprised.
He got problems that you and I ain't got. He married to a model. The model say, bruh,
I'm married to a model too.
He married to a supermodel. Yes, you're right. You're married to a model. And she is an amazing, amazing woman. But he's married to a supermodel by profession. And
by profession, my bad. Man, my wife turned down all the jobs and stuff.
She didn't want to do all that traveling. But he's got problems that we ain't got, man. He's got probably so many opportunities that are post football. So we'll see. Shout out to a great career, man. I am not a Tom Brady fan. In fact, I would probably be the captain of the Brady hater world, but I gotta respect greatness when I see it. The man was great. 7 Super Bowl championships. He could have easily been a lot less victorious in those championships, but I digress. He wasn't, and he's got the 7 rings.
You just keep throwing little grenades.
Man. I can't stand that dude, man. I can't stand that dude, but he is good. He is good in the cemented. He is in the Mount Rushmore of all athletes. I don't know where you put him, but he's in the Mount Rushmore of all the greats. Muhammad Ali goes up there for me. Michael Jordan goes up there for me. Tom Brady goes up there for me. Although I would do it holding my nose, can't stand the fact that it is. And then I would put Serena Williams, or try to add another person to it. But those are the ones for me. Mayweather doesn't make it up there for me just because of some of the business related decisions that are made in boxing. But shout out to Tom Brady for a great career. The other story, the Pro Bowl doesn't even make it to the NFL storyline this week. I don't know how long the Pro Bowl is going to last.
They put the skills competition back in there, and I saw a little dodgeball. That was pretty fun to watch. Dodgeball yesterday.
You need to be careful, man. Don't tear up your knee on no dodgeball.
On the dodgeball, it's funny.
That's what one of the players, I don't remember who it was, tore his knee in the skills. Remember they were doing volleyball. And a guy tore his knee a few years ago. I don't remember.
There was a dude that were doing sand races. Yeah, and he tore
his knee up, man. Don't mess up your knee behind that, especially because y'all NFL, y'all contracts ain't guaranteed. So we'll see the Pro Bowl this week. It'll be interesting to see that viewership. We'll bring that on next week. But you go from 60.99 million viewers that was the high for the AFC Conference Championship game. It's going to be about 25 people to watch the Pro Bowl. And they all going to be families of the guys in the Pro Bowl. And the other story that rounds off the NFL for this week is the Washington football team is now going to be called the Commanders. ETP, with all of your marketing and branding prowess, what do you give it? Thumbs up, thumbs down, the Commanders. What say you? We go to you first. What do you say?
So the name itself, I think it's fine. Sounds like like a unlicensed NFL video game team, but it's it works. I think ultimately it represents the city, commander in chief. I get it. I don't have really an opinion one way or the other. The thing that really was interesting to me is just how disgruntled the ownership or the organization was, because when they rolled out the promo video, it basically said Redskins and showed the iconography all throughout. And then at the end, they're like, yeah, by the way, we changed the name. So they basically are right. we are not accepting that this is racist. I just put my mindset of if this was just racial slurs against black people or anti-Semitic slurs against Jewish people or any other group, and they're just saying it freely and celebrating it and be like, this is our heritage. And by the way, we also changed our name. It's just such a It's such
What
a
a week,
disservice.
man. What a week, because you present that from a very interesting perspective. In the same week that Whoopi Goldberg is in hot water because of her comments related to the Jewish community, in the same week that Brian Flores shines a light on the NFL's problem. The Commanders is the name. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Big Flow Show before we hop in, because Brian Flores saga will be discussed here today on the Ball Hawk Sports Talk. Before I let you answer, I ask everyone, please like, comment, share, tag a friend, tag a foe, tag anybody that you know, and please subscribe to both our YouTube channel and our podcast. Make sure that if you're tagging someone, tag them now, because Brian Flores' story, we're going to discuss it here in about a minute. So go ahead and tag somebody, and let's hop into it. Before we do, what do you think? Washington Commanders.
Trash. I think that name is trash. That's
Trash. You like Bubba
trash. It's bad. I like the Washington football team. Leave it at that. I thought it was kind of interesting. I don't know what the Commanders.
If it's gonna be as general as Commanders, you might as well have kept it Washington football team.
So do you switch the logo every year? So like, do we have Biden on there now, and then Trump come back? If he come back, was it a rotating logo? I don't know, what logo do you have for the Commanders? Just a C? I mean, what are you gonna do? It's a mascot. The one thing I had to mention this, and I do every time we do it, is I had Ronaldo win on the Big Flow Show, and I interviewed him. He played for the Redskins for a long time, and he was taking a little back when you say that the Redskins was racist, because he said it was the most often picked team by Native American Pop Warner teams. They always picked the name the Redskins. They wore more of the gear, more of the uniforms. So when they did the research, one thing, as in a woke society, sometimes we jump to conclusions. So I don't like to speak for other groups. So when I hear the Washington Redskins is a racist thing, to me, yeah, it sounds bad. But I turn to the Native American and say, hey, what do you think? Because it doesn't really matter what I think. And so I thought it was interesting. And I bring this up every time the story comes up, is when they did the research, it seems like the Native American community didn't find it to be racist. They actually embraced the team as their own. So that's what's interesting to me. So now they're the Commanders, and we kind of look down on the Redskins for saying that. I'm just saying, like,
some of those studies can be misleading. Of course, they gravitated towards the name because it was theirs to own. It was their heritage, their nation. Of course, they gravitated towards the iconography because, again, it was their heritage to own. And I get the study. I do get the study, but I think sometimes those studies can be misleading because
how can you? That's my problem. How can it be misleading when you go to the people that can be offended and they say we like it? Nah, that's offensive.
Black people call each other niggas all day, and you're gonna tell me that this is not this is different?
If you ask us,
if you ask us if
Washington football team uses the N-word as their mascot, we're gonna say we're offended by that.
All right, so name an NFL team, the Chicago Niggers, and see what happens.
Yeah, and we're gonna have a problem, and then that makes it offensive. But if we don't have a problem with it, we would have a problem with it, though.
Yeah, I just think the reason I think it's different, though, is because and look, I'm not Native American, and I do think that study is telling, but I also think that study is a little misleading because of the imagery. The imagery is something that you would gravitate towards if you're a Native American, and you think that somehow, some way that celebrates your history in a positive way. You're grabbing onto the positive aspects of it, but the name itself is a negative connotation to that imagery. That's all I'm saying. Like it is right. You're like, I'm the war chants in Kansas City. I think like there's a whole group of people, Native Americans in this country, that are so much more than people that subscribe to war chants. There's a whole history that's being left out, that the only thing the NFL is celebrating were this little slice of the negative aspects of Native Americans. And that's all I'm saying is that, I don't think you can celebrate that. And I think the Washington football team would have been
just need to bring it up because I just feel like it's one of those things where we all jump up and we all say something. Most of us probably don't have a lot of Native American people in our lives because of where we are in the country, where there's not a ton. So I would just be very interested. Anybody watching that's Native American, please like, share, comment, and then let us know what you think.
And blame, I just find it an interesting topic. And blame the Big Flow Show for that. All right, so with so much going on this week, Again, we ask everyone like, comment, share, tag a friend, tag a foe, tag anybody you know. Please subscribe to both the YouTube channel and to our podcast. Now, Brian Flores. Brian Flores this week set off what was an atomic bomb in the NFL. At a time when the viewership was at its highest, the productivity on the field seemed to be the most exciting. We've almost forgotten about the headlines that I think demanded the ink across the country about the CTE issue related to football. Football is at its most popular moment in the history of our country. And in that moment, Brian Flores sets off an atomic bomb that says it's still an institutionally racist business that does not treat black men that are trying to be head coaches, that are trying to be GMs. They do not treat black men fairly. And oh, by the way, not only do they not treat black men fairly when it comes to the hiring process, oh, by the way, we have examples of these same white leaders in this business tanking games by way of these black coaches. And in doing so, not just tanking games to get a higher draft position, but by tanking games, trying to soil the career of these black coaches. Hiring black coaches for bridge roles. You're here as a token with no plans whatsoever to give them a legitimate shot for a coaching position. And when you think of Brian Flores saying that about the Dolphins, we all thought that Brian Flores was a stopgap option. When you look at David Culley, who I thought did a fine job with a terrible situation down in Houston this year, how does he only...
That wasn't even stopgap. That was just distraction. His hire. And
we said it, example after example. You looked at, Ray Rhodes in Green Bay when he was fired, and then they bring in Ray Sherman the next year. Not only did he only won one more game, but then they made him basically an executive in addition to being a head coach. Like, those two things don't match. It's happened over and over again. When you think of Todd Bowles with New York Jets, he did more with that bad bunch of players than I could have ever imagined. The concept of a bridge coach starts to make sense. Now, it hasn't happened yet, but I'm waiting to see if a white coach is also going to step up and say, hey, yeah, I was asked to tank games. Hugh Jackson talked about his time in Cleveland. And I made jokes about it because I'm a Cleveland Brown fan. I can make jokes about my own team. But he said that he too was offered incentives and bonuses to lose games. Now, in this world where gambling has become a part of the overall NFL picture, the tanking the games is going to have its own issues. There's going to be a congressional hearing about this because, anti-bribery, there's stuff in place to make sure that kind of stuff doesn't happen. I don't think that there could be a more interesting story in sports than this. Because, again, in 2022, 19 years after the Rooney Rule was established, we have one black NFL coach. So when the 58-page complaint is filed as a class action, it starts with some pretty interesting language. It has an F-bomb in there somewhere. It talks about Bill Belichick's text exchange related to the New York Giants job. This is unbelievable when it comes to the NFL. But I dare you to find a black person that is surprised. None of us are shocked. And I'll go one further, is that when you hear about some of the very inadequate hiring procedures that black men have had to undergo. I dare you to find a black person in any industry that doesn't feel similar. When you hear people say, "Oh, it's not that they're not hiring black people; they're hiring people that they're more familiar with." I dare you to find a black person in any industry that hasn't had that. In a law firm, it was one black male attorney. You're looking at him, and I've told this story before, where the attorney would go around the entire transactional floor. Hey, you want to go to lunch? You want to go to lunch? He would walk his happy-go-lucky behind right past my desk, right past my office. And at some point, right, and the Rooney Rule was supposed to be established to help us overcome that this good old boy network, that we can overcome it. You hear about the hot young coaches that are vying for the open roles now. They're all, seem to me, all a part of that good old boy network. Just in general, when you heard about the David Culley complaint, what did you think? And then let's figure out where we go from here.
Well, I mean, we talk about the story, everybody, we talk about the show before and what the biggest stories is. And I came out and said, this isn't the biggest story. So I was wrong. It is the biggest story, but by far not the most shocking. Definitely more shocked that Tom Brady retired than to find out about the email with Flores. Definitely more shocked to see Harbaugh go back to Michigan than I think about the Flores situation. What else can I throw in there that I'm probably more shocked about? Definitely more shocked that LaMelo Ball didn't make the All-Star game than I am to see about the I think I read that right, than I am about the Flores.
LaMelo Ball got snubbed.
He got snubbed. That's way more shocking to me than this. At the end of the day, the Rooney Rule is not an anti-racism or affirmative action rule. The Rooney Rule was something that someone came up with to hide the racism practices there. There's nothing more. No one with any common sense thinks that just because you interview somebody and don't give them the job that you're no longer discriminating against people. So the Rooney Rule was created to cloak all of the stuff going on. Oh, and this was just exposing the stupidity of it. Oh, shit. Okay, yeah, before we announce it, get the Flores guy in here. Let's talk to him for a couple minutes, and then we can do the announcement. So much so that they've announced it to everyone else. Everyone knows it's a joke. This is why does Bill Belichick know about the hiring of this? Because they sent it out on the non-black text feed, right? He's like, oh, I misread my text. So they're not even being difficult about the situation. They text the other coaches to see that they hired somebody else. Everybody knows about it except the black coaches because they're just not involved in the inner sanctum. That just sheds the light on it. So the Rooney Rule has been a sham. They expanded the Rooney Rule now to say that you had to hire interview black people for the coordinator jobs, but it's just a sham to hide it. So we could say it's not racist. We had 4 black dudes in here for this job. We're not racist. There's no incentive to actually hire them. There's nothing to make him to make it go. And as you mentioned, yeah, they'll have some stop gaps here and there. Okay, we're rebuilding. Okay, throw a black coach in there for a little while. We rebuild. You can keep them till you guys lose contention, then you can get rid of them. It's like a deal that they're putting in there just to kind of hide it and cloak it and do whatever. But the Rooney Rule is the dumbest rule that I've ever seen, that you have to just talk to somebody. And this is the only thing that may shock some people, is to see it be exposed like this, where it's after the fact. But this probably happens every time. It's just Belichick messed it up. And now they're going to be like, Bill, oh, damn, I'm sorry. I exposed it. They'll get over it. They don't care.
Yeah,
ETP.
I think that the shock, there's something shocking in here, right? Like there is shock in here. There is total surprise, but it's not about the practices. It's not about the accusations. To me, Brian Flores is in the midst of an interview cycle for another head coaching job. He's he potentially could get hired by the Saints or by the Texans or another team, right? He came off of 8-1 on the tail end of a season. He's been an NFL head coach. So the shock to me is that he got to a point in this process. He has devoted his life to the sport of football, to the profession of football coaching for so long. And it has gotten to a breaking point for him that he's willing to compromise and sacrifice all of his accomplishments in order to essentially be a martyr with the intention of exposing and changing the institutional and systemic racism that exists in the NFL on the heels of seeing what happened to Colin Kaepernick, and while he's actually in the midst of potentially taking on another role as a head coach. So the shock is he felt so compelled to compromise his entire livelihood, his life's work, to do this. And I commend him for it. But that was the surprise, because you've gone all this way. You made it to the top of the chain in terms of what you want to do professionally. He said it himself. I am gifted at coaching. And you looked at that gift and said, it's not worth all of the essentially like poison that has come with this gift and the people that have been affected by this negatively. So the shock is that he was willing to make that individual sacrifice.
I'll give you that.
And then in terms of the Rooney Rule, like, I don't think the Rooney Rule by design was intended to be just a cover up. I think in application, it became a box checker. But I think the intention, it's because the disparity was so bad and there was so little attention or consideration of black coaches at any point that they were like, yo, y'all got to at least interview these cats. At least put them in the room, and maybe somebody will come out and they will amaze you so much that you will change your mind about keeping this good old boy network. So I don't think the Rooney Rule in itself was a sham. I think it was made a sham because there was never any intention to actually make any change. But somebody stood up. Rooney stood up and said, yeah, we're not even talking to these guys. We're not even giving them the opportunity to even pretend like we want to give them a job. So let's at least let them in the room so that we can look at the situation. And very rarely somebody's going to be, I mean, the saying goes, to be black, you got to be twice as good to be regarded as half as good. So that it's a step, but the problem is we're so far oppressed and so far disenfranchised that it looks like a sham because it's an inch when you need a marathon.
Who came up with the Rooney Rule?
What do you mean? Who came up with it? It was named after the Rooney.
I know it was named after him, but who came up with who installed it?
The
I don't
NFL.
know. Well, you mean who was the commissioner at the time?
Right? Huh?
What do you mean? Who was the commissioner at the time?
The current commissioner, right?
No, Goodell was not the NFL.
Oh, who was the commissioner? It was a commissioner, right? But the commissioner came up with it. Did it come out of the NFLPA or did it come out of the commissioner's office?
I think it came out of the commissioner's office. Great question. Okay. I don't know.
Who does that person work for?
The owners.
The owners.
All right, so you look
at the NFLPA would have come out with the rule, and I could be wrong, but I think I'm right. If the NFL would have been the spearhead for this rule, I would look at it a little bit differently. But the guy who Paul Tagliabue came out with this rule, right? He worked for the owners, right? He protects their interests, and he comes out with this rule. It's a sham. That you don't think they all sat in the room? Look at how flippant these emails
there's nothing wrong. What's wrong with the rule? I guess
like the rule is what I'm saying is the
rule is fine if they use it in good faith, but they're not using it in good faith. Like,
but I'm saying is when they sat around and talked about how do we get beyond, because nothing has changed, right? How do we buy time? How do we get beyond this? They sat. This is the same NFL that Chucky felt like he could send an email to another team and talk all kind of craziness with a bunch of people on there and not worry about it. This is the same NFL where, Belichick just gets a text message to see this guy is hired and figured out what's going on, and he makes this mistake. This is the same NFL. You think that when this Rooney Rule came out and they sat in the big room and they discussed it, that the owners were like, hell no, I'm not doing this. You guys aren't forcing me to hire. They said, listen, let's come out with this rule. We have to interview the guys. We can't make you hire anybody. These are your teams. You guys do what you want. We'll come out with this little rule. Everyone will be happy, and we'll do whatever. You don't think those conversations went down? You think that they came out and they said this is going to be in a broad form like that, effort to actually do it because of the guy that works for that makes many millions of dollars from the owners? You think he actually came out with the rule to force their hand on something? That's BS. It was a sham from the start. It was disingenuous from the start. I never think there was anything positive about it.
Well, I say this because ETP makes a point in saying at least that if they have him in the room, someone could wow you. Because that's how Mike Tomlin got the job. The Steelers had no plans in hiring Mike Tomlin. He wowed them. So I think that there have been some beneficiary results because of the Rooney Rule. But if in good faith, people aren't adhering to the nature and the rationale behind the Rooney Rule, then all we're doing is what we saw here. Brian Flores talked about, and it's very interesting, he talked about Brian Daboll basically having the job on Monday, whereas his interview wasn't scheduled until Thursday. That is a check the box exercise, if I have ever seen it. It's a waste of Brian Flores' time. It's disrespectful to his experience. It is undermining to the Rooney Rule itself, but it is telling in terms of where we are with the NFL. And it just so happens to have happened in the same year that you have a clear example of a bridge job. David Culley in Houston, how do you fire the man that doesn't even have Deshaun Watson? On a team, talent roster-wise was pitiful. So you basically have blatantly said, we just brought you in here because.
Did they hire Culley after the scandal broke with Watson? My time is a little messed up. Yeah. Okay, look, we're gonna have a terrible year. Hey, bring in the distraction, right? Bring in the distraction. I mean, let's face it, Notre Dame did the same thing with Willingham, right? We messed up the guy messed up his resume.
O'Leary, yep, George O'Leary.
O'Leary messed up his resume. Notre Dame was embarrassed. I said, well, we'll in the black dude. We'll bring in the black coach. We'll get him for a while. And
you think they did the same thing this year? We lost our coach unexpectedly, so let's just hire a black guy?
I don't think they did the same thing this year. I'm not going to go there. I think this man was highly sought after. I think the Notre Dame has come a long way since then. I want to believe that. I want to believe they have. But I didn't believe it when Willingham came in. I said, what a shell game. Oh, my God. They just got embarrassed that they hired a guy without checking his resume. And so now we got to go bring this dude in. As soon as that smoke clears, get his ass out of here. We're going to go for somebody different. I mean, it's the way thing. And I don't want to paint everybody that way because obviously in the Steelers organization, it's a little bit different. And they look at the rule the right way and they did things. It just – if there was any – you said nobody impressed in all these interviews? No one has been impressive? That's what it is? We don't have anybody worth it doing?
I think to your point, they've been impressive. They haven't been impressive enough to break through to get to make the exception to the rule.
You've got to be so impressive that
you got to be undeniable. You have to be the Michael Jordan, LeBron James of head coaching to get to that point. Like
you got to inject yourself in the middle of a good old boy network.
Yeah. And culturally make them comfortable. You also have to make them comfortable.
Ultra rich people. Ultra rich don't do what people tell them to do. They don't care. That's how they got to be ultra rich. They're for self. They're ideologists. They do whatever.
Right, but if they see the money is there, then they're gonna support it, right?
So in ETP, you talked about the text thread. Bill Belichick is privy to information about the New York Giants that most people aren't, because Bill Belichick is in that room when the power brokers that run the NFL have conversations. Bill Belichick is privy to that information. What I'm saying is that there's been very few, if any, black folk that have been privy to that information, that have been in that room. And without black folk being in that room, this will persist. The need for the Rooney Rule, the need for the regulation around human nature such that these powerful white people don't bring black folk into the room and give them a legitimate chance. The need for that persists. And the systemic racism part is that we have not been able to break into those rooms such that we have a legitimate shot. And to a certain degree, while it comes across as extremely racist, the truth of the matter is a lot of these dudes are a part of this good old boy network. They just looking out for their boy. They just looking out for their friend. Nothing different than we should be doing, but we don't do. Because while Brian Flores, you're right, is risking his career, I think he did two smart things. He made it a class action because he knows that other black coaches have had to experience the same thing, and they might be willing to step up and be a part of this. A lot of whom are probably now retired, but they have the scars to prove it. But I'm gonna be honest.
Explain that from a legal perspective. The class, what you just said.
Just meaning that there has to be a class of people that are equally impacted by what he is alleging. And so
So he opens it up for the opportunity for other
people
individuals to join the suit.
join the class. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So once the class is established with whatever definition, like this is how you qualify for the class, then people can then join the class. Right. And so I would imagine a Hugh Jackson would join the class. They say Hugh Jackson has already gone public and talked about his experiences in Cleveland. So yeah, I would imagine that he would join the class. But and I hear you on the martyrdom, but I was the same way on Colin Kaepernick. To be fair, I stopped short of calling him a martyr, and we've had that debate, asked and answered. We don't have to debate it here. The same thing is true for me with Brian Flores. I think Brian Flores is deserves the credit for bringing this to light. But I felt some type of way too when I see Brian Flores over the week doing the TV circuit up there with 2 white attorneys. As a black attorney that deals with this type of stuff, that works in class actions, that does civil rights stuff, I'm like, even if you hired those 2 white attorneys, couldn't you just make it a 3rd attorney and make sure that there's a black face up there represented? Because at some point, right, even the way we refer to this whole Brian Flores thing, as black folk, oh, he's going to be blackballed from the NFL. Everything black can't be negative. You couldn't hire not one black attorney to be up there with you. And it's not requisite, but it just shows that, like,
the imagery.
He might
have interviewed one, but he wasn't the most
qualified. They weren't twice as good.
Are you serious, Brian Flores?
I agree with you. From an optic standpoint, you're like, okay,
why is Ben Crump not on? Why is Ben Crump not involved in this?
Just put Ben Crump is very easy to find.
Maybe he felt nobody would listen.
I'm fine with you keeping the same 2 attorneys from a substantive standpoint, but like, so for me, you know, and it was more personal because it was my brother. I hired 2 white agents, and I told them the stipulation was, but we've got to have a 3rd agent on there, and that's going to be my biological brother, who happens to be a brother. You have all the cards in your hand. You were calling the shots at that point. And now you're in the same seat that these owners are in when they're deciding who their coach is, and you don't use that leverage to at least give a brother a chance. Now, he didn't have to do it. He might have hired the people that he thought were most qualified, but I'm here to say, and it didn't have to be me, right? Because this ain't personal, but I know that there are a lot of qualified brothers that could have been in that room with him and made his complaint better, made his position stronger, and more importantly, he would have more of an impact on another industry, because Brian Flores isn't the only one dealing with this, not just in head coaching roles of football, GM roles of football. Every industry is dealing with it. And the NFL is, at least from an optic standpoint, because they have 70% of their employment base, there's black folk, the players, they're at least smart enough to create a Rooney Rule. Finance ain't got no Rooney Rule.
Right.
Law ain't got no Rooney Rule. Marketing ain't got no Rooney Rule. And so here it is, black man, you got an opportunity. So yeah, I felt some type of way with it. Now, I still want the right outcome, not for Brian Flores. Brian Flores is symbolic to me of what the problem is in the NFL. Brian Flores is going to be all right, officially, because the NFL, you better believe, is figuring out settlement terms right this second. Everybody involved when it comes to this complaint is going to be all right. But what about the young upcoming coach that is still going to be faced with the systemic racism that is persistent in the NFL and in college football and in all executive roles? I hope the right outcome comes about because of Brian Flores. But he's the symbol to me. That's why I'm not willing to necessarily give him his martyrdom that you are, ETP. I hear you, but like we got to start holding ourselves accountable too.
Yeah, I mean, the accountability is across the board, because there's always somebody that will take the token situation, right? Look at how many people. So the timeline of this is crazy, right? They filed a 60-page suit against 3 teams, and within an hour, the NFL doesn't say we're launching an investigation. The NFL says blatantly false and like wildly uncharacteristic accusations. We condemn all these allegations.
Shut it
down.
They're without merit. They're without
Shut it down.
Merit.
Without an investigation. Like, And then to go back to your point about, one thing that I love about how this is being presented with Brian Flores is he's not leaning on the attorneys, right? He's doing the media circuit. He's the one speaking. Like, the difference, that's one thing. Like with Kaepernick didn't even really talk. It was just like this really weird, like, communication strategy. But it's almost to the point where he's on CNN, he's on all of the major networks, and it's his face, right? So the attorneys, I think, are important, and I'm with you. I totally agree. There should have been some level of representation on the legal side. But he did a great job. He's been doing a great job of being the face.
Yeah.
And that's very important.
Even if it was a young black associate at that firm, you've got the leverage. Tell those two partners, hey man, I want a black associate working on this. And I want that associate also to join us in the interview.
Yeah.
Right? Sorry to interrupt, but it just drives me crazy because we also got to hold ourselves accountable. They're not going to let us in the room. We got to kick the damn door down. They're not letting us in that room.
What do you mean? Hold ourselves accountable to what? We just want opportunities, right? We need to feed our families.
I agree. When I say hold ourselves accountable,
how do we do that?
If you're saying, I don't feel like you guys, NFL is saying that black coaches aren't good enough to lead their team. And when you're making that argument, you're saying a black lawyer is not good enough to help you with the argument.
Exactly. This is what I mean. Hold ourselves accountable. ETP. When it came to Colin Kaepernick on this show, I was very adamant about, yo, come on, Colin, we got to boo, 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 boo. And when it comes to Brian Flores, I'm saying very clearly, like, brother, you had an opportunity. You could have hired. There's so many qualified. We're saying Ben Crump, right? Because what Ben Crump does is a lot of times, in a criminal situation, as it relates to the police, there will be a criminal aspect to it, and then the family will hire what they call a family attorney. And Ben Crump is normally the family attorney.
Right. He's the marketing. He's the marketing engine.
Right. But it didn't have to be Ben Crump if you didn't want to take that route. For every Ben Crump, there is 100,000 other black attorneys out there that would be representative of a cause from a substantive standpoint, but then the optics of it.
Yeah.
To me, that's what I'm saying. Hold ourselves accountable to. Now,
right. I agree, but I don't know that it. I guess the emphasis of that it's a very valid footnote in my opinion. I don't think that it casts a shadow over what's happening.
I agree.
But that's the piece where we're quick to just be like, oh, this is what they did wrong, but. I mean, look, at the end of the so I put myself in the mind, and we got a comment about was the Bill Belichick text the breaking point. Like, I just put myself in the mind of this guy who's been a great professional, right?
Yes.
And he has this text exchange where one, he's like, yo, this is dope. I'm about to get this gig, right? And then in reverse, he gets a text that says, oh, my bad. It was already decided before you even walked in the door, boss. Sorry. Like,
right.
The psychological torment that comes with that potentially for your life's work. I mean, I can't blame him too heavy to be like, dog, your interview process on your attorneys ain't killing it like that. You know,
let me give a flip side to it too, though. Like, maybe there's a little bit of, okay, let's go extreme. Let's say he would have walked up there with Al Sharpton and Jesse. A lot of people would have been like, oh, shit, here we go again, right? So by him walking in there with two white attorneys and not turning it into a complete racial circus on his side, he's not playing the quote-unquote race card and saying, I'm going to come up here with a bunch of, preachers and different people like that to make it turn into us against them. He brought two white dudes in there. He's talking about a problem. He's handling it. He didn't pay attention to who he picked. He just picked two attorneys. He thought they were powerful. He's not going to go the same way and do it. So maybe there's a little bit of that because it's a little bit more. If you bring in, let's say he brought in a whole black legal team and you're going up against the.
I'm not saying that. I didn't say that.
I know you didn't say it. I'm just giving you an example of what he might have been thinking. And maybe he didn't put any thought into it. Maybe he just hired two attorneys that already work for him. You never know that. I don't know what their relationship is, but at the end of the day, he walks into there and you have a group of black attorneys with him turning this into an issue. Then you got a 1-31 coach saying, I support you, who's not a HBCU. Like the power is kind of like, let's just put these dudes aside. But
Right.
I don't know anything about the attorneys. I didn't even see the interview. But maybe he's thinking, okay, I'm going to bring some guys that speak your language. So some of the stuff you're going to try to dismiss, you might not want to dismiss it from these dudes.
The attorneys are well regarded. I did research on them just because, again, this is the kind of work that I do. So I research them. They're well regarded. All I'm saying is this, and then let's move on, because I am nitpicking. But I'm nitpicking because, hold on, I got to plug in. I'm nitpicking because when it comes to these matters, we have to nitpick as I plug in. Sorry. Because if not, then I think we allow these issues to continue. And so I'm nitpicking just because I think that if I was in the same situation, I would have done that, if nothing more than a ceremonial hire to bring somebody in. Because if we don't give ourselves a chance, who will? We got to be purposeful about the moment. And in that moment, when you have the entire world watching, when you dropped a bombshell on the NFL, when you've decided to do the TV circuit, I'm okay with you just bringing an additional person in. I'm okay with you setting the terms for those attorneys and saying, you guys are my guys, but we're going to bring in one other person.
Well, I mean, the irony of it is the attorneys didn't have the self-awareness of the moment. Because if I'm a white attorney, I don't know what that feels like. But if I am, then I'm sitting here and saying, okay, from an optics perspective, we're talking about systemic racism within an institution and an organization. Let's go get a Johnny Cochran. Let's go get, let's have a team. So that even the attorneys weren't thinking like this has to represent what we want the outcome to be. So I'm with you, but like you also, I'm all for the post game analysis of it. I think the Flores, that's a lot of responsibility to put on him, and I don't think that he's the only one that is responsible for that.
I agree.
But
in that world with those attorneys, of course they didn't appreciate the optics of it.
But
that's the same issue we're dealing with.
Why wouldn't the attorneys have addressed it?
I know. I'm saying, of course, the attorneys didn't appreciate the need for the optics. They didn't, because that's what we're talking about.
No.
The NFL executives don't even understand that in this moment, when you've got the hottest product in the United States when it comes to a sports standpoint, ain't even close. Look at the viewership. Look at the corporate sponsorship. Ain't even close. While I love the NBA, MLB is struggling a little bit. NHL, it ain't even close. It's the product of all product when it comes to a business standpoint in America. Right. And the owners don't even appreciate, after Colin Kaepernick, don't even appreciate, I got to hire some brothers. You know how I know? Because there's one NFL head coach right at this moment. They don't appreciate it. So of course, I didn't think that the attorneys, these two white attorneys, would think about that. What I'm saying is,
well, why not? Because they're representing something. I mean, if you're regardless of race, if you are a high-powered attorney, as you know better than any of us, you're gonna say, well, what's gonna be best and most admissible and valid evidence in the court of public opinion, and maybe they would say, you know what? Let's get a third chair and let's put a black person, a man, a woman, or anybody in here from a presentation standpoint, because we're fighting against an injustice and we should represent the outcome that we want for that injustice. That's all I'm saying. But all that to say, like, I think we're putting way too much emphasis on that point when we're talking about an entire organization of international proportions that ultimately has not just admitted racism, or not just being accused of racism, but also being accused that the sports betting industry is blowing up. And we're talking about coaches being offered $100,000 to tank a game.
That's going to be that.
That's couch cushion money. That's couch cushion money.
Let's talk about that part, because I said that I was going to speak my piece. It's just frustrating to me, and I know for other professionals that have been in this world. When in finance, there's a brother that finally ascends to the managing director role. You're finally an MD, but now all of a sudden you're like, well, You know what? I don't care if they're black or not. And black folk even have a tougher time being hired by that black managing director. Same thing when it comes to all these other professions. I'm just saying that, and I'll leave it there, because Brian Flores, from a symbolic standpoint and what he represents, far more substantively, ain't got. I am talking about sort of the footnote, but the footnote for me, as a black attorney that works in that space and knows tons of attorneys that do this kind of work, it ain't got to be as extreme as, and Johnny Cochran, you said, God rest his soul, rest in peace. It ain't got to be extreme as the high-profile Ben Crump or Al Sharpton. It don't have to be that extreme. There are professional black attorneys that do this work on a daily basis that have outcomes that would absolutely rival the outcomes of the attorneys that he hired, that he could have hired. And I'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Now let's get to the substance of it, because there is the part about tanking games, right? There's the aspect of tanking games in a world that the NFL now has embraced gambling. It's been legalized in most places. You can go, the online betting is a big part of it. ESPN gives the odds now, right? And so in this world, to hear that the owner, Stephen Ross, is encouraging a coach to lose games by way of paying him extra to lose a game, or the same thing in Cleveland, there's a whole different aspect of it. That's where I think Congress is going to get involved, right? You have this Sports Bribery Act legislation in place now that protects against these things. The bribery itself, that's even if you don't even have to accept it, to offer it is a form of this act. So Stephen Ross is really fighting for his team at this point. He might be forced to sell it. This might be another Donald Sterling situation.
Absolutely.
Right? If proven. And I'm assuming there's a prosecutor waiting in the throes that is going to prosecute this. They're going to assemble a grand jury, and there's going to be there's going to be subpoenas. There's going to be discovery related to this. We're going to hear more about this. Then there's the John Elway part. He said in Denver that they got to the interview inebriated after partying all night. And let's be fair, because Stephen Ross has said that the accusations are malicious and defamatory. Same thing with John Elway. He said they're false and defamatory. The New York Giants hasn't said much, but they've said that Brian Flores was in the thick of the hiring process until the 11th hour. What they did not say is that they didn't hire Brian Dable before interviewing.
They hired him on the second hour.
Daylight savings time. The clock had fell back.
The 11th hour.
He didn't set his clock right.
But the thing I think that gave me most concern, and you pointed to it, ETP, is the NFL came out so quickly. They did a more thorough investigation, and someone said this on ESPN this week, and it just like, damn, they gave a more thorough investigation for Deflategate. Some deflated footballs got more of a thorough investigation. Like the NFL could have said, we're going to look into it. We're going to invest resources to make sure this type of stuff is not going on.
They didn't try to get anybody.
They said without merit. Why? Because you pointed out when we talked about Paul Tagliabue and the Rooney Rule, you pointed out the Big Flow show that there's an inherent conflict. You've got a commissioner that is supposed to be serving the league that's really working for the owner. So when something like this comes to light, you better believe that the commissioner and the NFL front office is going to do everything to protect at least the reputation of its most valuable relationship. And the most valuable relationship the NFL has is the relationship that it has with its owners, not the relationship that it has with its players. And so, or its coaches. So here we are. Let's get into the anti-competitive nature of tanking games. Yeah. And then we'll move on from this, because we got a few more things to touch on. But what an interesting accusation that he was given incentives, money, to lose games in order to make them get them a higher draft.
Was his accusation that it was clear cut? Because I know in the Cleveland situation, coach mentioned that it wasn't exactly clear. Like, here's $100,000 to lose, but he was saying they were giving him some incentives that were. His was a little bit more of a. Takes a little bit more of a leap, and you'd have to be there type of situation, where he was saying that for the quarterback playing the whole game, the rookie quarterback playing the whole game, he got an incentive. And this person, real weird things that would make you lose, not as much incentivized to lose. Incentives that would make you, if you reach
give you
them,
less of a chance to win.
Give you less of a chance to win. But they weren't as clear cut as here's 100,000 to lose. I think Flores was saying that it was clear cut from what I understand.
He said it was $100,000 to lose, and that even more so shows he went 8-1, and he beat Bill Belichick's Patriots on a decisive playoff implications, right? So so if you're the owner and you're trying to get the head coach, and the head coach is like, nah, obviously the owner is trying to sabotage this thing all throughout, right? So it's just more of a testament to Flores as a coach. But I think without that, that's the only thing that's gonna snag. Like, that's the only thing that's really gonna catch. All of this other stuff is like, oh, there's hearsay, speculation. You're accusing of racism, but it's unfounded. But this tanking, and then you get the class action, and people are gonna come on. You got Hugh Jackson, but Hugh Jackson would look for any excuse to not be responsible for losing 31 games out of 32. So,
hey man, you ain't got
to pay him a lot of money, man, to lose that many games. How much you have to pay you to lose?
I was like, yo, then.
So now you're getting personal. As I'm the Browns fan, you didn't have to do that.
If I'm going to argue, I don't want the first guy stepping up to say it that it was bad. That was 1-31. January 31st.
His bank account should be
my lead witness.
Right. Your car ain't that nice. There's no way that's true.
His bank account should be swole. I ask our live audience, and again, I tell you, as we ask humbly every week, please like, comment, share, tag a friend, tag a foe, tag anybody that you know, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel and to our podcast. I ask the audience humbly, also, not only humbly, but with sincere, inquisitive nature, what do you think about this? The first time that you, as an audience, the first time you heard about Brian Flores and this accusation, what did you think? As each layer started to unveil itself, what did you think? When you think about this transition of information over the last several days, where do you think it's heading? Because what the systemic racism accusation point out is that it's a feeling that we've all had, but we don't like to express it. We don't like to say it publicly. And when I say we all, I ain't talking about just black coaches. Whatever system you're a part of, whatever industry you're a part of, we felt it, but we don't want to say it. To that point, I give Brian Flores a lot of credit. Because when a lot of us are considered for those roles and we feel as though it was not really ever in contention for us to get the role, we don't say nothing to HR. It ain't like we report to the local news or to the industry journal that we're a part of, that this is going on. So I give Brian Flores credit for that. For our live audience, please comment. I want to know what you thought when you first heard it. I want to know, as the layers started to unveil, what you thought. I want to know what you think where this is going to lead us. Is Brian Flores going to be something that we look back on this class action complaint and say this was a turning point in the NFL in giving black people a real opportunity to positions of power, the executive positions, the head coaching role, the GM role? Is this going to be something that we think is going to change the dynamic of the NFL? Because in a time where undeniably it is at its hottest, it's at its most valuable state that it has ever been in, the NFL. The Denver Broncos owner is about to sell that doggone team for crazy, silly, stupid money. At that same time, you look at the viewership over the last several weeks. This will be the most expensive Super Bowl ticket ever. You want to go to that game, you paying a lot of money, $3,000 to go get you a seat in SoFi Stadium. So here it is. This
in the room only for $3,000.
Say again.
standing room only for $3 grand.
Oh, $3 grand. Yeah, you sitting. You're not sitting. You standing. Matter of fact, for $3 grand, you gonna help them pass out hot dogs.
Right.
But,
hot dog here.
Hot dog here. What do you guys think?
Well, I
think our audience, and I'm going to read each one of these. I think it will give us an indication of what we all are experiencing in our respective lives. Right. How many times, and I've shared it here as a principal, educator for 41 years. As a black woman, my mom got passed up so many times by just because she was being interviewed at the same time as a white VP that was trying to get a principalship. And we've all had it. But here it is in 2022, at the beginning of Black History Month, when this class action complaint was filed. Please weigh in as an audience, live audience, because I want to read all of them. Maybe we'll be able to respond. I'll give you guys last words on that same question. Where do we go from here? Right? Well, the concept of a bridge coach always being the black coach. The concept of a coach being asked to tank always being a black coach. The concept itself reeks of the situation a lot of us find ourselves in other industries. And that's where I give Brian Flores credit, because we don't hear a lot of people complain about it in this public of a stance.
Yeah, I think there's a few questions in that question, right? Like, one is, what happens to Brian Flores from here, right? Like, does he actually get a job, or is he basically gone by the way of Kaepernick?
Retired.
If someone hired him now, do you think that, like, I would roll my eyes if someone hired him now? I was like, okay, this is
well, that's the question, right? It's like, it's almost like somebody kind of has to hire him, or they just won't. Yeah, So that's I think the timing of it, that's what raises the question, where, like, I'm not sold that he's totally finished, because this is so high profile, and the allegations are so broad that it's almost like, if he doesn't get a job, then they're essentially admitting guilt in ways that there was no guilt. You know, Colin Kaepernick wasn't accusing the NFL of anything specifically, right? So him being ostracized from the league, you know, in these like real clandestine, you know, collusive ways, you can't really pin it, right? But this is saying the NFL is systemically racist. And then they're like, yeah, cool, you ain't getting a job because you're accusing us of being systemically racist.
Right.
So I'm if I'm the NFL, I'm like, damn, this is a media crisis. Like, we kind of have to make sure he gets a job. But then on the flip side, the owners, the reason why this is the situation that it is because the owners are fully protected, and they're the ones that run the league. And how many of them are going to want to say, all right, we'll bring this guy in, and he's the whistleblower. And we know that we've been doing this for decades. So we don't really feel comfortable putting him in a position of power.
In any other circumstance, I think it would be evidence of retaliation. But the NFL has hired, on paper, less qualified white coaches for so long,
right,
that I think they get at least the benefit of the doubt when it comes to how they run their business. Right? Because, I mean, even Brian Daboll, they said they hired the most qualified guy. He's never been a head coach. So there's no rhyme or reason to it, and it's happened and persisted for so long. And I think that, you know, but we shall see.
Do you think he's going to get hired? You think he'll work, or no? You think he's done?
I don't know.
I don't think he's going to try to get a job. I think this was his retirement. He even said he knows he could coach at HBCU. That's about all he's got left that he could go coach at right now. When you asked this question to the audience, what was the first thing you thought?
Yeah,
and I was like, damn, he's kind of young to call it quits, because that's the first thing I thought, because I wasn't surprised what would happen. But I'm like, he ain't never going to get
younger than Tom Brady. He's retiring younger than Tom Brady.
Yeah, he's done. He could. I don't know where he could go. He could do, if BET started doing games, he might be able to get a color commentating job there. But I don't want to make too much of a joke out of it. But he's done. I don't even think he would go for a job. I think he's.
He's in the hiring cycle right now. He's under consideration.
He's still considered for.
He's interviewing.
I think he's got a legitimate shot for the Saints job.
Stop it. Is there a button I can press to stop y'all from talking? Stop it. He's not in anybody's interview cycle. His name is out there. Me too. My name is out there too.
He's
I
actively,
declare for the
he
draft
hasn't
too,
been
by the
actively
way.
interviewing with them. Obviously, that's what I'm saying. Like, if he doesn't get any of these jobs, then it
Stop
strengthens his
saying stuff like
case.
that. I respect
It
you too much
strengthens
to
his
hear you
case.
talk about it like it's a possibility. That's
I'm,
done.
no, I'm not.
That's
What I'm
dead.
saying is, it wasn't a it wasn't a possible. It was less of a possibility before this all happened, and now I think it's more of a possibility because they're having a bit of an existential crisis about, damn, if we don't hire him, it's just going to continue to shine the spotlight that the Rooney Rule is a sham, that we aren't really about diversity. We're not about giving the right opportunities. So all I'm saying is there's a little bit more pause by these owners.
What's the spread? My fault, Hank. Hey, Hank, that wasn't a slight at the HBCUs. I'm just saying that they're the only people who will give him a chance because of what's going on. So don't take that as a slight to HBCUs to say it's a lesser job. I'm just saying that at this point, he went against the establishment. There's a lot of secrets that a lot of people had to swallow that none of us know about, that are out there that black coaches have had to deal with. Once you come out like that and you start talking about try to give you $100,000 to do it, they're going to get indicted by the feds. Now he could get a job if it comes with a gag order, and I think everybody will contribute to the salary. But no, he's done. That's dead. He's not bringing you in here.
So
you let the secrets out.
I want to say he's done, but I also I don't want to. I have to take into consideration that like you said, ultra rich people are about protecting the bag, right? And consistent, like riding that line to be like, yeah, he was never going to get a job. Look, we just didn't hire him again. Oh yeah, and we didn't just hire him again. So it's just, there's something there. Like, they collude to try to protect the shield. Like, that could be one way that they try to protect the shield. However, one of the franchise owners needs to take that quote unquote bullet and say, all right, I'll let him in the organization and we'll see what happens. But I think you're right. I think he may be done, but I'm not fully convinced the same way.
If he wasn't done for the
Kaepernick is.
racist accusations, that 100,000 killed him. That's
Yeah. Because now Congress has
that's
to get
real
involved.
trouble. I really predicted the Miami Dolphins guy, if he can find any proof whatsoever about the Hunter, he has to sell the organization. This is humongous. This is bigger than when the Saints. Look what happened to Sean Payton because of the Bounty Gate.
Bounty Gate. I'll say this.
This is the biggest thing ever. If
because
they paid him $100,000 to lose, it's the biggest story in sports history if it comes to be a big deal.
Yeah, it is. And look, and Pete Rose and his inability to make it to the Hall of Fame was based on betting. But our resident Saints fan that we know about, Cheeky Black, says it's all smoke and mirrors. The Saints are interviewing Flores, Bieniemy, meaning Eric Bieniemy, the offense coordinator of Kansas City, who's black, Leftwich, meaning Byron Leftwich, who's offense coordinator in Tampa. But in the end, they will hire Dennis Allen, who is white. And
I don't even know who Dennis Allen is.
and look. So, and we don't know that is true. But when you hear Keyshawn Johnson this week saying that one of his black friends was interviewing for a job, but called him and said, I know they're going to hire this other guy already, but should I go to the interview? He's like, yeah, you should go get the experience. When you hear Brian Flores talk about the Texas exchange with Bill Belichick and saying that basically the job was already taken, but, I'm going to go, I got to go do this sham interview anyway. That's the part that I'm saying, that as black folk, when we just going to be like, nah, bro, I'm hiring you in addition to these two guys, and we all going to be on the set together.
But you know the answer to that, because then both of y'all are gone. Like, that's the issue, right? Like that's why when black people are put in positions or earn opportunities, you have to do what you need to do to protect it. And the problem is, it's always whether it's psychological or it's real, but it's both. When somebody happens, especially if you brought them in and they're black, y'all both pack your shoeboxes and go
out of here. Go and get.
There's no possible way. So so then the second question to that is ownership, right? So now we're talking about, there could be another team there could be multiple teams up for sale at this point, right? And so does Jay-Z does Jay-Z be the one that actually wins when the NFL is accused of racism?
South Florida that's for sale right now. I'm telling you right now.
Jay-Z's expressed interest to a certain degree. I don't know what he's going by now. Sean Diddy Combs has expressed interest. There have been other black moguls that have expressed interest in owning an NFL team, and I don't know that I don't know what the ownership transition plans are when it comes to the NFL, and if they could force the hand for it to be sold, because I don't know if there are rules against that. This is all private business. But it would be good to see. It would be good to see, because if not, then we're never on those text threads. We're never in the room. So someone's like, yo, bro, like, maybe you want to wait and at least hear Brian Flores out in this interview before you make that decision. Just from a fairness standpoint, right? There's nobody within that text thread to say, bro, wait a minute, you hired Brian Dable already. Brian Flores did a pretty good job. 2 out of the 3 seasons, winning seasons. Now,
and he comes from the Belichick tree, who comes from the Parcells tree,
nobody
and the New York
said
Giants.
Nobody said that, but of course not when it's a protected group of good old boys. Please keep them coming for our live audience. We want to hear what you thought when you first heard the Brian Flores complaint that was made public. So we want to hear, as each layer comes out, we want to know what you think, and most importantly, we want to know where you think it goes from here. Yeah. Right, like, because even how he described Brian Flores' eventual or suspected eventual situations, like, oh, he's blackballed. Everything black can't be negative, man. It just can't be. And we've got to make sure that we don't continue to perpetuate that lie that black is negative. So I want to hear from our audience. We got to get into Jim Harbaugh, because in a weird way, right, throughout all of this, Jim Harbaugh is getting interviewed, and it looks as though he had the job, right? He had the job. The person making the decision in Minnesota is good friends with Jim Harbaugh. Surprise, surprise. Basically tells him, yo, just come. You got to come do the interview, and it's good. Jim Harbaugh is a quirky dude. But I don't know how he messed this one up.
He probably came in there barefoot. He probably biting his toenails during the meeting. You know, he's crazy.
Biting his toenails
during the meeting. How do you? I mean, let you finish. I'm sorry.
I'll send it over to you. What do you think about it then?
Because next time I go for an interview, I'm definitely biting my toenails.
If you can still get that job, racism is over.
See how flexible I am?
Listen, this Harbaugh thing to me was goofy, because he was saying, you know, I know a lot of people close to this, but, you know, he told recruits, yeah, I'm going to go try to go get this job. Like, you know what I mean? Like, most of the time, these dudes lie and say, look, I'm not really interested in the job.
On signing day. He went on signing day.
Signing day, yeah. I don't want to tell too much inside stories, but recruits signing with them people, he's telling them, I'm going to interview for a job. I'm trying to be up out of here, man. The bottom line, I'm going for it. Not, hey, I got to hear him out. No, I'm going to be up out of here. I'll tell you the reason why I think that happened in a second. But then he doesn't get the job, and he has to come kind of crawling back. And knowing a lot of Michigan people, they're celebrating it. But I'm like, oh, he didn't want the job. When I was in college, Coach Holtz is like, hey, you start interviewing for a job, you know, it's God bless you. But once you kind of put your shoulders square towards that door, he push you through it. Hey, God bless you. I'm gonna pray for you. I'm gonna root for you. I hope you guys win all your games.
But you're not here with us.
You're not here with us anymore. Right. The head man just did whatever, and now he's gonna come back. It's kind of like until something else come up. I'm surprised he's not in contention for the. I don't know how many jobs are still open, but I'm surprised he's not in contention for any of the other jobs. But it smells to me, you know what I mean? Like, he's going to go back and lead these men now. He wanted to leave. Now, I think the reason why he wanted to leave was last year they made him take a pay cut, right? They did this.
He volunteered that. At least that's how they said it. His PR like person said that.
Because then I start wondering, you went to Notre Dame twice. You went to Yale, but you repeat stuff that makes you, it's questionable. You know what I'm saying? It's questionable. But yeah, he volunteered to take less money. Did you just say that?
He went from $8 million to $4 million. That's what he said. He voluntarily took a pay cut. That's what he said. I'm just all right. Go ahead.
Come on, man. He's like, oh, man. You know what, man? My job pays me way too much. I'm gonna get them some bread back. No, so let me just pay them some money back. So that was the best way they could spin that story, is that he volunteered to take a pay cut, right?
Right.
So after they didn't do that and they took the money from him, it's a little humiliating or whatever. You're mad. So then he comes and he wins. He's like, and I'm out. Now I want to be out. So he was going to walk and strut his butt out the door after he came and got their first Big Ten championship. I told y'all I was the man. Y'all just wasn't patient enough. And now you don't get me no more. I'm going over here, except for the fact that I chewed my toenails in the interview. And now,
but on National Signing Day, like
that's crazy.
On National Signing Day, you're taking a job interview with another organization.
And you think about how bad, because they didn't even offer him more. Like, well, I don't know.
You're just asking for the transfer portal to fill up.
He didn't even, I know, right?
I can't believe it. But isn't this the protection of the complexion? Imagine any black coach in college football that decides to go interview for an NFL job on signing day, yet the Michigan faithful are just embracing him back. Yet he gets to waltz his happy little butt back and say, nah, Michigan, I'm coming back.
I'm even surprised it worked for him, to be honest. I don't take race out of it. I'm surprised he could even pull it off.
If he didn't if they weren't in the playoff this past year, then no.
They're so happy he's back. The king is back.
That is mind-boggling.
They were calling for him to be fired a year ago. A year ago today, they were like, I don't think he should be here.
He chose to come back. The articles are saying he messed up the interview. He didn't get the job. Look how gracious he is, because he said great things about the Vikings and he's back. It's like you're looking around like,
fellas, in this particular week with the Brian Flores bombshell, it's just I don't know, man. Sometimes, man, look, I try not to be too dramatic when it comes to these things, but when it's like blatant and right in your face, there's no way any brother in college football would be able to do that. They would be like, they would hang up on him when he calls Michigan, like, I'm coming back. Like, the hell you are.
We already hired
we've already come up with our statement. We're talking to the recruits. We've come up with the transition plan. You are no longer welcome back here. Only in a world where white coaches, especially with the nepotism and having a last name like Harbaugh, having played quarterback at Michigan with all the whiteness therein, only in a world that exists and it's protected, that can be reality. I'm sorry. In the same week that Brian Flores is going through what he's going through in the interview process, Jim Harbaugh not only gets the interview from his friend and is guaranteed basically the job. Just don't show off your just don't lick your elbow in the interview. Just don't lick your elbow. You know how you like to lick your right elbow? Don't do that, Jim. And you've got the job. Right?
Some go.
How does that happen in the same week, fellas? And I know we laugh to prevent from crying, but that's insane.
It's insane. It's insane. Like, again, it's insane even for a white coach. It's insane, period. How does this happen? And I watch it because I know so many people involved that are like celebrating that he's back. And I'm thinking, you want him back? He just tried to quit.
On
and he couldn't get a job to leave.
Signing Day.
On National Signing Day.
Double middle finger on National Signing Day, when people are deciding whether or not they're actually going to sign the dotted line for the University of Michigan and come to Ann Arbor. On that day, you have made it public that you were going to fly up to Minnesota and interview for a job on that day. And yet the welcome hinges are still in full operation to bring you back to Michigan.
Do you, fellas, so I guess crazy. The question, like, was he just totally oblivious? Was he totally just disregarding of like the impact that it could have? Or was Minnesota like, you want this job, you show up today and you come interview on this day?
Hey,
like,
man,
how does this come together?
I think he was totally white and totally protected. And look, I just want to make sure that we call out what we need to. Because, you know, and I'm on a text thread with a few of the brothers that I played with, and they were kind of laughing at the whole Brian Kelly thing, dancing with recruits. And it's kind of funny, but I'm like, no, it's not. Like, at some point, I think a lot of these guys, maybe unbeknown to them, maybe they're not doing consciously, but they're making a mockery of us, man. You could get up there and dance with a recruit, and all of a sudden the recruit comes over and it's all good and kumbaya. Nah, man.
But that recruit signed with Alabama.
He did sound Alabama. That's the best news I heard all week. I
That's
just
'cause
think
Nick
in this
Saban is a
week,
better
when
dancer.
we are looking at coaching and the opportunities that come because of the relationships, and then you look at a Jim Harbaugh, and I bring Brian Kelly here because I'm like, nah, man, I would want a parent to step up on that doggone stool and like, yo, get my son off there. I'd rather you take a picture of him next to a study hall. I'd rather you at least give the indication that you think of him more than just a TikTok dancing fool. And now the whole world's like, don't laugh at my right. Come on, what are we doing?
What are we
But
doing?
What are
with
we
Harbaugh,
doing, man?
like with the contract side of college coaching, is it mutually is it voidable on both sides at any point?
I don't know what his contract looked like. Obviously he decided voluntarily, of course, to take $4 million instead of $8 million.
Yeah.
But you know, here's my thing, man. And I'm and again, I'm talking about this thread with people who I would never disclose their name. These are my brothers, people that I respect. And they're talking about, I'm like, well, hopefully you would never sell your soul for that, because I just think that in this world that we've had to assimilate in so many different ways when it comes to the hiring process, we've had to dance a dance that we never wanted to. We had to make ourselves a little more palatable to people that don't look like us and be less offensive and take bass out of our voice and smile when shit ain't funny. In that world, I just hate to see that with my brothers. I'm like, nah, man. At some point, like, enough is enough. Enough is enough. And I wish Brian Kelly well at LSU. But I also think that there's a time where you're making a mockery of us. And I'm looking at Jim Harbaugh. You made a mockery of that university, man, and the whole signing day process, and these kids' allegiance to the school is part and parcel to allegiance to the coach. He's a part of that dynamic. In the same week that Brian Flores is giving us a full-fledged description of horror stories when it comes to being black and being hired in the NFL. And sometimes, you know, I just get to the point where shit's enough, man.
But
Shit
Harbaugh
that pissed
did
me
beat
off.
Ohio State. So for them, you could shoot somebody in the face. If you beat
First time
Ohio
ever?
State.
First time ever?
First
How
time
many
ever, they'll
times
take
with look, and it's hypothetical, but how many times you think a black coach would get to freaking lose to Ohio State? Ain't no way you get that many opportunities. He got his head bashed in every single time. And then the first time you beat him, you out. First time you beat him, you get celebrated. Like you can do no wrong. Get out of here, man. Get out of here. And to me, that's why I say the Brian Flores complaint is more symbolic. It ain't just about the hiring within the NFL or in football in general. It's symbolic of all of us that have to deal with this BS. I'm going to keep it PG-13 in our respective industries. Anyway, let's talk about the WNBA, man, before we get out of here, because the WNBA had an interesting week. Big business in the WNBA. We saw that Becky Hammon, who is an all-time great Hall of Famer basketball player, but also now a highly coveted coach. She leaves her initial team and goes to the Aces, Las Vegas Aces, and the ownership pays her $1 million. You would think that, like, oh, this is cool. But the Las Vegas Aces, their star player, Liz Cambage, the big center, 6'8" or so, unstoppable on the court. She was also unstoppable in her voice. She called BS on us, like, wait a minute, man, you got us flying in coach. Basically flying standby to get the games, and you're paying this coach $1 million. While we talked about the inequities of pay when it comes to gender, men and women, she was talking about the inequity of pay when it comes to players versus coaches. The owner, Mark Davis, stood by the decision. What'd you guys think about it? He's like, yeah, we wanted to show that we could pay the money, and it showed an interesting sort of tug of war. What'd you think about it?
So I think it's good that it's, you know, shining a spotlight just on the financials in general, right? So there's no salary cap on coaching staff, right? So he can pay his coaches whatever he wants, and he came out and he said specifically that he wanted to make a statement to say we can have $1 million coach. The crazy thing is Becky Hammon, being somebody that was trying to move up the ranks in the NBA, basically walked, and I think it might be on like making $1 million. She might be making the same she was making with San Antonio as an assistant, but either way, it's close, right? And yet it's a big story. But the thing that's outside of everything, like we can talk about the salary disparities, and obviously, the WNBA has financial issues across the board, and they did the capital raise and all of that. But the fact that they have to fly commercial, like I don't even know that they fly economy plus like that. Out of anything,
you gotta sit. She's 6'8". She's sitting
she's
by
6'8", dog. Like I'm 6'3". I can't. My knees don't make it that. And like if I'm flying from New York to LA,
Right.
I need a couple days off, right? So she got to fly, cross country and then play a game at an elite level. So that piece of all of it, not to make a joke about it, but just the resources. Like we can talk about the salary caps and the pay disparity, but just the resources, the functional resources, where if there's a flight delay, if you get a cramp, if you're in a tight space on a plane, that could affect. You could be taking a flight to a playoff game, to the finals, and you're flying in economy, and people are like, oh, what do you do for a living? Oh yeah, I'm the best basketball player in the world, and you're going to your meeting in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Like it's crazy. That's the most insane thing. And I hope that they at least change the resources. We can talk about the pay disparity, but it's hard to justify any of that when the financial issues, the WNBA operates collectively at a loss. But the resources to allow these athletes to be elite and give them what they need in order to function, that's the most criminal part of it. Because you can't explain that away.
Yeah. The Big Flow Show, I'll give you last word. We're going to get out of here for the day. This week's episode is Know Your History, man. And the history of the WNBA has been interesting, but we're at this point now where $1 million coach, one that they wooed away from the NBA, but the history of payment to the players has been abysmal. I'll give you last word before we go home today.
I think it's a movement in the right direction. I'm kind of get a little side eye with the player speaking out against it, because it's a start. I mean, they're not going to just dump $100 million into the system in 1 second, in 1 day, in one movement. So yeah, the first step is, you're paying these coaches. Next step is you're going to be paying the players. You're going to update the stuff, what's going on. I think, hats off to Davis for saying, hey, I wanted to show people that it's possible to pay one of these coaches $1 million,
right?
To do it. It's a start in the right direction. I don't think we should, I fall a little short of calling it crab barreling, but it's just kind of like, listen, like support your fellow sister that's going to come out here and make it, and know that hopefully you're next, and speak about saying, hey, like maybe her statement, and I don't want to speak for what she has to say, but I would have preferred, if someone cares about my opinion, for her to say, hey, look, I'm glad to see it. Hopefully this is a movement in the right direction. I'll support her, blah, blah, blah. But to say, why are you paying her $1 million? That just doesn't, I don't see it. I don't know. I don't like the way that sounds to me. Be happy. I'm happy the coach is making money.
It has just been disclosed, too, that there's been a $75 million capital raise for the WNBA. Nike's involved, Condoleezza Rice, Michael Dell, people that are notorious for making good investments, have invested $75 million cash infusion capital into the WNBA. So we'll see if more people step up and invest in what I think is a beautiful game. ETP has some suggested revisions to it, but we'll leave it there.
I'll bring my PowerPoint presentation next week, and we'll put this to rest, and you guys can stop mocking me for having a very innovative, forward-thinking business plan, business model that would make the WNBA very lucrative and expand its reach and awareness.
Let's see if we can get in touch with Liz Cambridge folk and have them play one-on-one. She's gonna dunk on your head with that suggestion.
After she does that, I will give her the full presentation of how she can make enough money that she doesn't have to fly back in a plane.
It's all about the money.
She has OnlyFans right now. She's fine.
She is fine. So I said it. I will leave it there, man. It's been a great week. Thank you guys for your input when it comes to all of these issues in sports, business, and entertainment. Like we do every week, man, we ask you humbly, please like, comment, share, tag a friend, tag a foe, tag anybody that you know, and please subscribe in both YouTube and in your podcast space of choice. Please subscribe. This has been a great week, man. Know your history in a month, February, where Black History Month is being taught, and hopefully in all the schools around America while it's being discussed in our own homes. We also saw that in that same week, you have the Brian Flores class action that represents, it does represent Brian Flores. Yes, it does represent Black coaches in the NFL, but I think it also represents more. It represents the feeling that a lot of Black professionals have had in their respective industry. Know your history. And knowing it by way of this class action, knowing it by way of the anecdotes that other coaches are coming out and sharing, knowing it by the history of the Rooney Rule, seeing that in 2003, they came up with this rule and there were 3 Black coaches. In 2022, there were only 1 Black coach as of the taping of the show. Knowing your history is one thing. Doing something about it is another. We'll see what the NFL does next. We'll see what in the respective industries. If you hurt people's pockets, that is a way to get their attention. In the business world, if there's no diversity on the board, investors won't invest in that company. They hurt their pockets. In this world, in the same week that we've seen record numbers of viewership, we'll see if this allegation indeed hurts the NFL's pockets. But at some point, knowing your history has to be superseded with doing something about it. I hope that we do something about it. The NFL, you're on the clock, man. You're on the clock. Because while I do appreciate all that the NFL was able to do for me, all that it's able to do for the 70% of Black players that it has, all that it's able to do for all the employees in working the respective organizations, enough is enough when it comes to executive roles. Enough is enough. You're setting an example for other industries, and I hope that you do something about it now, because it should have been done a long time ago. And with that, we is out. It's the Ball Hawk Sports Talk, with sports, business, and entertainment collide. It's your boy B Brown, ESQ, aka the Ball Hawk, aka the Mouth of the South, aka Mr. Success and Celebration, aka Breezy. And please like, comment, share. Have a great week. We did it rough, rugged, and raw once again. Have a great week, y'all. Peace.